Hi everyone, Ashley Mailloux, Scott Shapiro here with a stakes preview for this Saturday, January 3rd. We'll head down to Gulfstream Park in Hallandale Beach and take a look at a stakes race number 10 on their 11 race program. It's the Mucho Macho Man for the 3-year-olds, $175,000 on the line, and it's what we'd expect, a 1 turn, 1 mile there on the dirt. Very curious to see where horses will go from here, right? This is obviously a stepping stone, Scott, to bigger and better things throughout that championship meet.
Without question, the start of the Derby Trail with the Holy Bull on deck next, Fountain of Youth, and then, of course, the featured Florida Derby. This looks like a pretty competitive race. I think there might be a horse that I would prefer out of all of them pretty significantly if we're talking about in the future, but that doesn't mean that it has to win today.
We'll take a look at the Timeform US pace projection here for this field of 9, and a fast pace is projected, maybe led by the 3 here, Epic Summer, who's coming off a little bit of a freshening. The 7, Blame Yourself, who was also entered in a spot on Friday at Gulfstream Park, showed speed on debut as well. I would agree with this. Would you, Scott?
I would. I think it's going to be a very quick pace. Cabourg, who they don't even have on the lead. I don't know what's going to happen this time, but he kind of ran off a little bit. I know it wasn't a super fast pace, but he wasn't going to be relaxing at all that day. So, yes, I would expect a fast pace in here, kind of just a matter of if, one of the speeds kind of outspeeds the other at Gulfstream, like it sometimes happens and kicks away, or if it sets things up for those from off the pace.
We see the LP flag attached to the 6 here at Tripp's Promise. It's a little intriguing. Doesn't necessarily have to be a closer. Could be a little bit more close to it early on, but we'll see what they decide to do. Let's dive right into it, though, with the number 1, Commandment for Brad Cox and Watson Racing. Was 4th on the debut, came back to graduate next time out, and it just feels like, kind of looking at this horse, sure, the buyers didn't take a boost. Scott actually went down a point, not worried about it. That just distance might continue to be his friend.
Yeah, the speed figures to me at this point, if you're building up towards something bigger, very relative. You just don't want to see big steps backwards after a big effort on debut, in my opinion, huge ones. He didn't do that. He took a step forward. Look, I mean, that first race, that debut at Keeneland, that was one of the more live maiden fields. Gallivan, who ran 3rd, came back to win a stakes race in his next start against as a maiden. Local Knowledge was scratched out of a spot earlier in the Gulfstream Park meet, but it looks like a serious Todd Pletcher runner. And then he came back and he got that good learning experience, got some dirt kicked in the face, and then he came home pretty well after being much closer to the pace. So he looks like a pretty serious horse. He's out of a good dam, and he's got the best rider in the country and a trainer that should have him ready.
Brad Ortiz Jr. with the call there for Commandment. The 2, Cabourg, up next here for Jose D'Angelo. He's a really tough read for me. I felt like I loved his debut, and I just been a little disappointed with the last 2. And it's not just that he went off favored last time out. He sort of opened up a lead on them. He almost went, 24 and change to the half, 47 and 2, and still couldn't hold on. Maybe he'll be better second time going long, but like I said, Scott, I didn't necessarily love his last 2.
That last race is tough for me to get excited by or, consider him in this spot drawn inside other speed horses. He just didn't relax well. I know they didn't go super fast. The second quarter was faster, but I mean, 2 horses caught him too, right? It wasn't like he just got caught by 1 horse. He tired. 2 horses were not flying after him. So it was underwhelming. Maybe Junior Alvarado will be able to find the keys a little more than Tyler was, but I'm against them.
We'll move on to the 3, Epic Summer, who we haven't seen since, late fall in New York. We'll take a look at that effort. Belmont at the Big A back on October 26th. And thought this was a really good performance. Obviously, we saw him debut sort of late in that 2-year-old season, but he's pressured here by others, and he's still able to win quite nicely. And also bodes well that 2 horses, it was a compact field, but 2 horses that finished behind him, the last place finisher, the second place finisher, they both came back to graduate and made in special weight events.
That was a very good effort. You like to see the grit. The negatives to me would be they ran 1, 2, 3 kind of around the racetrack that day. So it wasn't as if he turned away all comers necessarily. And then the real concern to me, and the only real one that would prevent me from betting him, is he has a gap in his works from November 21st to December 19th. I don't know what happened. He might be fine, but that's always a little bit questionable when there's taking a little bit of time off for a young horse after a big effort.
The number 4, Mr. Hooligan, up next. This one for Kevin Rice, a horse that debuted at Presque Isle, then went to Keeneland, then went to Tampa. Pretty well traveled, but still a maiden at this point, and got the pace help last time out. Maybe not the right distance, but still really wasn't able to close.
This would be a pretty shocking. It's kind of a surprising entry. The positive is he's a young horse and he's moved forward in all 3 of his starts, but this would be a big surprise if he did anything more than kind of pick up the pieces like he did last time.
The 5, Roger That Dana. This is a Florida bred son of Awesome Slew who was able to win pretty nicely on debut and then went into deep waters right off of that. I know it was against the Florida breds, but still a $300,000 race, and the fact that he had to stretch out around 2 turns. He went to the front. He couldn't prevail. I don't dislike him. I still just find this race to be pretty tough for him, but I would say maybe the cutback helps him.
Yeah, the cutback is makes him a tricky read because that's a 2-turn race where he just kind of sped to the lead easily. They're going to go faster. It's going to be more demand to get to the front, more like he would, in his first start. So he's not going to be loose on the lead in here unless other horses don't break well. So can he win from off the pace? Can he win battling? That is a question. So it would be kind of price sensitive to me. I don't think he's impossible though.
The 6, Tripp's Promise is the horse that we saw with the LP flag attached. I thought ran really well on the debut, and I was there in his second career start. Scott, I backed him trying to beat Soldier and Diplomat, was unable to do so, but I still thought he ran well considering he was stretching out a distance. And more recently, it looks like they just tried different tactics, or maybe they were forced to because the pace was hot.
Yeah, he got out of the gate a little bit slow, and I think it was a positive to see the versatility. He can be up close to the pace as a young horse, and he can sit off. His father promises fulfilled. He only had one way to go, basically. So thought it was encouraging. He got the Corey Lannery ride in that race. You just sit on the rail and pass a lot of horses, and I think he might get a similar trip in here. We talk about a lot of pace. I'd be surprised if he was good enough to win the race. I wouldn't be shocked. But I think he's got a really good chance, especially if the price is good to be used as like an underneath key type.
Nice to see Corey Lannery named to ride him once again this weekend. And Dale Romans, from a limited number of starters, 2 for 3 at this meet at Gulfstream Park with a 3rd place finish as well. The number 7, Blame Yourself. This one for Victor Barboza Jr. Cross entered in that spot on Friday. Curious to see which direction they'll go. Was a pretty good debut, though, all in all, and they went swift. We talked about some of these races maybe not being the fastest. They did go 22-2 and then 45-2.
I would think he's got as good a chance as anybody of being on, the lead in this race. He's going to be ridden aggressively if he stays in this spot. And it's important to note, if he comes out, it might take some of that, heat out that we were talking about with the pace projector. But he ran hard in that race. That was a heavily favored horse. He turned away. Being off a little while makes you think he did run hard and maybe it took too much out of him. But I can't really knock his effort. It's just a matter of, what kind of trip and pace situation he gets.
The 8 max Capacity. We'll take a look at his most recent effort in the inaugural at Tampa. And he's dead last early. He gets a ton of pace help. They go sub 22, 44-1, and then 46-1 for a final time of 109. But I thought this was actually a pretty good effort. Solitude Dude won like he should have for Saffie Joseph Jr. and poured on the Jets. And he ends up being clear of the 3rd place finisher. I think, I can't say I love him here, but I am excited to see him get a little bit of added distance.
It's interesting. I mean, will they take him back because it kind of worked for him last time, but maybe not, because he's been very close to the pace going shorter distances prior to that, but that's his best chance. If you look at his pedigree, it doesn't really make you excited about 2 furlongs more. But I agree. He came home there as quick as he has in any of his races. So that was definitely a positive. Another horse that, could be a decent price. And I think the barn is off to a good start with limited starters to the meet.
And then rounding out the field is the 9 Thunderchuck here for Jorge Delgado, a horse that, his one off the board finish was a last place finish in the Saratoga Special, which obviously was a huge jump up from his prior start, where at Monmouth Park he won. He went gate to wire, but just with a 41 buyer. So draw a line through the Saratoga Special. I mean, I think to date, his best race was probably when we saw him last out.
Right. You have to wonder if he was one of these horses that matured very early. Or no, that was a 3-year-old race, but he debuted at 4.5 furlongs and they bet him down to 4 to 5. He didn't win. He's got speed. The one thing I like about him most in this spot is the outside. He's been down on the inside in his 3 recent races. Maybe it will allow David Egan, the jockey, to relax him a little bit and sit a Tripp off of these. Because if he tries to go with all these from the outside, he's going to get probably caught wide and get cooked up. So that's why I thought he might be a little intriguing underneath.
A field of 9 newly turned 3-year-olds will contest in the Mucho Macho Man. We'll take a look at our top selections here. And so it's exciting to see where these horses, how they perform on, say, Saturday, where they'll go from here, whether they stay at Gulfstream and participate in other races or maybe go elsewhere. And I think we both kind of thought and felt the same way, that Commandment, based on what we saw in the 2 starts, was probably the horse to beat.
Right. Betting wise, it's going to be tough because I think he's going to get bet, and he's going to be towards the back on a racetrack that can be speed favoring. But if he's as good as I think, and I just think he looks like a horse they're building up towards the bigger races. I'm not sure how many other of these I'm really excited about, moving forward into the Derby prep. So he's going to get a fast pace. I think he's the horse with the most upside. I just don't know if I'm going to end up betting on him.
Probably the horse is taking play. Commandment, Epic Summer. Blame yourself if that horse opts for the Saturday race. You go with a price underneath the 6, Tripp's Promise, who I think with that said, you should get an okay price on the Dale Romans runner.
That's how I'm going to try to play the race. I'm going to try to play Commandment, play an exacta 1-6, and then maybe a try with someone with a few prices in the middle and the 6 for third.
A lot of similarities between Scott and I in terms of picks. 1-6-9-5 for Scott, 1-3-6-5 for me. It's race number 10 of 11 this Saturday at Gulfstream. It's the Mucho Macho Man. Good luck.